Hello there, welcome to Genesis Models. My name's Bobby Waldron. In this step-by-step video build we're going to be looking at how to paint a basic miniature. So what I've basically done is I've taken a pilot from an F-16, a Tamiya F-16 kit. It's 1 in 48 scale, and I'm just going to show you some nice basic painting. So I mean, we're not going to be going advanced like something like this, where we've got highlights and all sorts of things going on and that kind of stuff. We're going to keep it nice and simple. You know, we're going to be working with base coats, we're going to be working with washes and a bit of dry brushing and stuff, just to keep it simple and give you say a basic modeler, a basic miniature painter, or maybe you're not good at doing miniatures but you like doing the models but you'd like to put pilots in. You know, this is probably as easy as it gets. This video is going to be showing you how to get a nice effect, a nice looking miniature, but literally it's not going to be that hard. As I say, it's going to be as easy as it gets. So let's get on the bench and let's get building the miniature and painting it and weathering it and all these kind of things. So getting started with our Tamiya pilots here. Now this one in particular is going to be going into our F-16 here. So what we're going to do to get started, first things first, is we simply cut them off the sprue. Now using these nice cutters here, what we simply do is we cut where the tabs are, where our pieces are. So I'm just cutting that there, but what I'm also doing, I'm not cutting right up to the piece. I'm actually leaving just a little bit of the tab left over, right? Because if we cut right up, right, we can have all sorts of kind of marks left on the piece and everything. So we've just got these little bits of tabs going on just on the end. Now there's lots of ways we could tidy this up now. We could get out a blade, just getting some sanding sticks here. We could get out sanding sticks, so you know, we could come along, we could get a blade and we could just nicely chop these off. Right, this isn't probably the neatest way. I mean, personally I have got used to doing it this way, and as you can see we can just tidy it up like so. Sorry, a bit off camera there. We can just tidy it up like so. Or we could come along with some skinny sticks, these nice skinny sticks from Flurry Models. You get them from Models Argo, Hanance, all those kind of places. This is like a nice fine sanding grit, and what we can do is get our tab, right, and we can just give it a nice bit of a sand, right, just to get rid of most of the leftover bits from the sprue, like so. And then we can come in with our fine sanding grit here, but it's also a sponge, so it goes with the curvature, and we have got a curvature here on the boot, so we want to kind of get that up all nice, and we can just sand it up like that. And as you can see, they're all gone, because if you ever cut too close to the piece, I mean, you could kind of slightly actually cut the piece, you could leave marks, or you know, the plastic can sometimes sort of rip and sort of almost kind of splinter off a little bit. You know, you kind of eliminate that and you make it all nice and perfect. Now there isn't that many pieces here, just arms, a head and stuff, so we can nicely cut these up off camera now. What we also have here is some heads and some hoses, right? Now with heads, heads are one of these things where it's pretty much going to be totally different colours to, say, the body, which, you know, it is. I mean, these helmets are like all white and everything, whereas our uniforms are going to be like greens and browns and kind of stuff. So with white, you want to get these whites really nice and white, and probably a bit satin as well. So it's probably a good idea to just leave it totally separate and glue it on at the end. And the same with faces as well. It's a lot easier to paint the faces with the heads off and then glue them at the end. So what I've done is I've just basically I've cut it off of the sprue and just left it on the sprue, and we can just cut that, tidy it up, glue it on later, and we can just get some locking tweezers here, and we can paint that nice and easily that way. Same with the hose as well, you know, put some locking tweezers on there, we can paint that separately as well. We then come to the body and actually all the other pieces as well, because what it is when it comes to the moulding of styrene plastic, it's basically two moulds coming together, and you know, they inject it with styrene plastic, right? But what this means is, I mean, it doesn't matter how good the manufacturer is, you always end up with these little kind of like seam lines, bits of flash. Now Tamiya, this is a Tamiya pilot here, and Tamiya isn't really, you know, they have lots of flash, but no matter how good the moulding process is, you always get this faint line, right? Now to get rid of these faint lines of flash, what I do is I normally come along with my blade, and I just run the blade along where our faint bit of flash is, just to get it up, right? Because we're going to be using things like washes and stuff, and what's going to happen is the washes will kind of get into these little tiny bits of flash, and they will show up really clearly, so you want to get rid of them if you can. Now you could use this method, sorry I'm a bit off camera again, you could use this method where we just nicely scrape across, which I do like, but we can always come along with like a nice fine sponge sanding stick and just, you know, give it a bit of a sand, right? And that's looking all good now, and we don't have to worry too much when kind of doing that on fabric, because fabric, well, this is, well, it's not fabric, I know it's plastic, but you know, we're representing fabric here, and fabric has all sorts of creases and folds in it, so you know, you haven't got to worry about being overly neat either, which is a nice little touch there. Now what we also want to do is we want to kind of prep for the whole spraying and painting side of things. So I've just got a nice little cocktail stick here with a bit of blue tack on the end. So what we can do is we can just tuck that in there, all nice, press it down nice and hard. Right, we haven't got to worry about painting the back so much, because we know this miniature is going to be sitting in a seat, which I've made earlier, so we're not going to see any of that. And this way we can now paint this, spray this hands free, and not have to be touching it or anything like that, because you don't want to be touching it because you can have wet paint and it creates all sorts of problems, right? But we'll do that later. What we want to do now is we want to position the arms. So I mean, you could be putting your miniature into a tank or a certain position, so what you want to do, you want to get the miniature in the position you want it to, make sure you've got the arms in the right position. Now with this one it's a bit tricky, we have to kind of put the pilot legs in first and kind of tilt him up a little bit, and then we kind of swoop the ejector seat in behind him, and then it goes in. It won't go in if the seat's in first, right? So you know, that's looking like it's in a nice position. Yep. And then what we want to do is we want to use what's a good glue is Tamiya Extra Thin Cement or Mr. Cement S. Any one of these products. There is a product review stroke tutorial on using these two products on the Genesis Models website in the video section, so go watch them on how to use it. But for when it comes to styrene plastic, these are two good glues to use. You don't really want to use super glue if you can get away with it or anything like that. So what we want to do, we want to get one of our arms, right, and we want to glue it in position. And what we can do, we can put a little bit of a blob actually on our miniature just to start with. Right, so then what this will do is when we kind of start to put this on, right, it will just hold it for us for a bit before we actually properly glue it. So then what we want to do
is we want to try and position it where we want it to be. So we kind of want to try and get it a bit down here where his hand is, where the stick is, which it's not looking like to be a good fit for Tamiya, and we are sliding a little bit. Now you have got time to sort of play around with this because we've only put a little bit of glue on, but it will and there we go. Now what we've got here, we've got a little bit of a problem. It's kind of to get this pilot with his hand on that control stick, we've had to kind of, I'll show you what I mean when I get him out. And I want to get him out without knocking the hand at all. Right, to get that in position, hopefully what you're seeing is the arm has had to come out a bit. Right, so we're probably going to have to put a bit of filler in there because we've got a gap now, but that's no problem. So we just want to make sure this arm now is nicely glued in. So, you know, we've put that bit of glue in there just to hold it in position a little bit, and now we're locking it down all nice and properly. Right, so I'm going to do the same to the other arm, and then we'll do a bit of filling. So now that we've given our arms time to dry and I've left it in the position I want it, we know now that this is going to be nicely locked in into a perfect position. Right, so what we want to do, we need to just get out our ejector seat, and then our pilot comes out just nicely like so in the perfect position. So let's put these out of the way. But as I said, I mean, we've got these gaps just underneath his arms where they've had to kind of come outwards a bit. We just want to fill them in with a bit of filling. Now this is all quite a nice miniature, so we haven't got to worry too much about getting in there with loads of filler and sanding and stuff. It's just this little bit here. Now what I'm going to be using, I'm going to be using Vallejo's plastic putty, a great putty to use. And what we're going to do is, with its nice precise applicator, we can just inject, sorry, a little bit off camera, we can just inject exactly where we want it on both sides. Right, and then what we want to do with a cotton wool bud and a bit moist, what we can do is we can just wipe that away. Right, like so, and we could probably bite it with our teeth just to kind of give it a bit more of a point so we can get in there and get out any blobs that we don't want. As you can see what I'm doing there, just biting it again just to get in there, and then we want to get around the other side and just make sure the other side's all good. Right, and we could do like a little bit of more of an injection in there as well. And again, cotton wool bud, give it a bite just so we can just nicely get in there and wipe away the excess. And there we go, we've nicely filled in both sides on the underside and everything, and got that looking a bit better. We haven't got to worry too much about this miniature because, you know, as you say, it's going to be sitting in an F-16, and, you know, we're only going to see this, so we're not actually going to be, you know, seeing underneath or anything like that. Now with this Vallejo plastic putty, once it dries, it does tend to give sort of air bubbles off. So you might find that there's a little bubble here and there. Once it dries, no problem, reapply exactly the same, and it should be all good. Sometimes, you know, you don't have those bubbles, so you should be alright, but that there now just needs to dry so we can put it on our cocktail stick with our blue tack. Right, and that there is all ready to go. Our helmet's all ready to go, a little hose here as well, with some nice locking tweezers, all good to go, ready for spraying, but we want to make sure that is now dry.